everybody help me in welcoming him with open arms, Kelly Brigman.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm glad to be here today. I thank you for letting me be your speaker, and I'm glad you're here. I want to welcome all of you. And if we have any visitors among us, I especially want to welcome visitors and to assure you that if you're a creation of God, you belong here, and you will be accepted here. I want to talk today about some things that are near to my heart and often troubling to my heart. And as we do them, and Imagine was beautiful, Donna, and thank you. I requested that because I would like for us to imagine a better world and to think about how we can be part of creating a better world and rise somewhat above what we know as the human condition. A way where we can go beyond the human mind and live from divine mind. So, prejudice and discrimination are as old as mankind, and frankly, I think prejudice and discrimination are both a very natural human temptation. I think it's pretty natural, and of course, as members of science and mind, we try to rise above mere human nature. So it's natural for us to look at people who are a little different than we are and maybe feel a little threatened by them. And sometimes we try to figure out a way to think less of them, and sometimes even how to think evil of them. And it's happened in the past, throughout the history of humanity, and it continues to happen now. I want to share a strange little story with you from Scripture. It comes from Acts 10. In the days of the early church, people were wondering and even debating, is the church only for Jews, a natural extension of the belief that Jews were God's chosen people and an outgrowth of the temple or synagogue, or is the church open to all people? And of course a test case was available, and Cornelius was a devout man and perfect in every way and wanted to be a member, wanted to join in the church, except he was a Gentile. So in our scripture, Peter is praying and meditating and falls into a trance, and he sees a sheet come down from the heavens, held by the four corners, and it's full of every kind of animal you can imagine. And the voice said to him, Peter, rise, kill and eat. And Peter said, oh no, Lord, I've never eaten anything common or unclean. I can't do that. And to end the scripture, the message that came to him was, Peter, don't call anything I've created common or unclean. There is no such thing. Our lesson is that we are all God's people. And further, the message is that all God's people are our people, whoever they are. A couple of weeks ago, Cindy, we've been in Mexico, by the way, for a couple of weeks, and we're glad to tune in Facebook, and we were with you. But before that, Cindy shared some of her travel log from California and made a point about it. So I'm going to share a little travel log too. A few years ago, Katie and I were in Prague, and we took a tour from Prague to Terezin. When we got off the bus, my salient memory was we walked through a cemetery that was beautiful. It was immaculately trimmed as if manicured, had many stones, and each one had a rose bush beside it. Some of them were in bloom, and they were dark red roses. I found out in Mexico we would say rojo fuerte, very strong red. Thought that was interesting. We read some of the names on them, but they were strange names, hard for us to read. And besides, most of the tombstones only had numbers on them. And at the end of the cemetery, rising high above the wall beyond it, was a big cross of David. And then behind it was a concrete or brick wall. And behind that was Terezin. Now, the fortress has a really Germanic name, and Terezin is close enough for me. It was a fortress from about the 18th century, and during World War II, the Nazis turned it into a concentration camp. Now, I was excited to be there because for a long time I wanted to go to one of the concentration camps. I just wanted to see one of the places where some of the worst horrors of humanity had taken place. And I just wanted to sit down and feel the energy in the place and meditate, kind of as a way of a moment of solidarity with the people who had suffered there. Because, you know, I'm not a Jew, but Jews are my people. And I wanted to share that with them. So Terezin was exciting to me, but it was not one of the death camps. It wasn't one of the worst. Terezin was the poster child of concentration camps. It's the one they wanted to take the Red Cross to when they insisted on inspecting it. And they had people there who were noteworthy, particularly artists and musicians and people who might be missed. In fact, I have figured out it was a way of people laundering in the same sense that we do money laundering. The records show these people went to Terezin and then they kind of got lost in the crowd, okay? Many of them were sent on to Auschwitz, for instance, for death. But of the approximately 150,000 people that were there, 33,000 of them seemed to have died at Terezin. They were very crowded in the little concrete barracks, and of course disease was rampant as it spread through. They were subjected to cold and the environment and malnutrition. And the whole setup was just designed to hasten death and to bring about a quick end. In addition to those kinds of things, sometimes sadistic guards beat prisoners to death. And in modern times, I read that one guard was convicted of beating 100 people to death. I just can't get my head around that. I can't imagine how anybody could ever do that. But it happened. And by the way, people who were disobedient or caught trying to escape were executed in the center of the camp, either by hanging or firing squad. So it wasn't a great place, but it was not nearly the place Auschwitz had been. After we had toured the main fortress, we went into the town. And the town of Terezin had been turned into a concentration camp, and it was a place where they sent children. We started at the museum, and the whole basement reminded me of the Vietnamese war memorial, because it was wall-sized plaques with the names of children that had died there. And of the 15,000 children that were incarcerated at Terezin, only 132 were known to have survived. We visited the dorms, looked at their little cots, looked at a few little possessions, a few pictures, things like a comb, maybe a doll or another toy, something like that. It was a sad, sad experience, and I just wondered how anybody could do that. How could it possibly be? How could humans ever become so judgmental that some people thought they were so good and right that they could literally kill other people because they thought they were inferior, something wrong with them? Well, the Holocaust began pretty simply. With an attitude of judgment. Judgment is about the most corrosive of all human qualities. And from that comes our attitudes in life. If you want to know what's going to happen, think about your attitudes, because we all manifest our attitudes in life. It's not our thoughts. It's particular thoughts, and it's our attitudes. Now, I requested Imagine today because I would like for us to imagine a better world, and Einstein has said imagination is a preview of life's coming attractions. And basically what we can imagine, we can help to bring true. And our judgments begin pretty simply, just little ideas. And even from memes. There was a book a few years ago about memes. And memes are just little statements and little attitudes that circulate in our society. And they infest us like a virus without our even knowing it. And little by little by little, our attitudes can become pretty bad. Not that we would buy into a horror like the Holocaust, but gradually we can build up to it. I'll tell you how I think this happens. We start with judgment, and then what I call the 3 Ds. First of all, we degrade or devalue a person or a group of people. We think they're inferior, they're lacking something, or we think they're just unimportant, and we leave them out of the equation. Now that's not so bad in itself, but it's a slippery slope. It is bad, but it's not the worst. Because if we go beyond that, and often we don't, we can demonize or demean somebody. And when we do that, we see something inherently wrong with them that cannot be changed by corrective action. Maybe something in the color of the skin, something in the DNA, something inherent about them. And once we've demonized people enough, they become less than human. And then we can destroy them. We do this when we go into wars. We demonize the enemy. And people don't go killing people. They go killing whatever we're calling the enemy at that particular time. We can destroy people emotionally, socially, or even literally, as took place at Terezin. And they started out talking about the Jewish question. Now, we do this in our society all the time. Listen to the news. They talked about the Jewish question for a long time, and then they gradually just shifted over to talking about the Jewish problem. And everybody assumed it's true after a while. And then you need the Jewish solution. Well, Terezin was supposed to be part of the Jewish solution. The Holocaust Museum at Jerusalem, the Yad Vashem, sums up the outcomes of judgment during the Holocaust. It's a memorial to the 6 million Jews that were exterminated just because they were Jews. And by the way, it wasn't just Jews, it was a list of inferior people, but Jews primarily, and they had become the face of it. Literally exterminated. The museum is just acres of facts and artifacts We only had one day there, so we had to move on. We couldn't stop and take in everything. But I'll tell you about two things that impressed me most. One was the children's memorial. It was like a deep, big cave. We walked down and there were stones and boulders beside us and over us. And we walked into the cave, and my first perception was it was really solemn. Spacious but chilly and dark. And it was lit by one candle. One single candle. However, there were many pieces of reflective glass, like shimmering mirrors, that picked up the light of that one candle and lit the whole big cave. One for each of the 50,000 children that were killed during the Holocaust. And a solemn voice on the recorder constantly reading the names of those who died. Names never to be forgotten. The second most salient part for me was the memorial to the righteous among the nations. And this is a monument and a garden that recognizes Gentiles that aided the Jews during the Holocaust. And this, in a sense, represents humanity's finest, the very best of us. Elie Wiesel, Holocaust survivor, gave his life to trying to fight oppression and war and inhumanity, said, "Let us not forget, after all, that there's always a moment when the moral choice is made. Many times we do it in the silence of the little mean and we start down a direction. So we need to be aware. There's always a moment when the moral choice is made, often because of one story or one book or one person. We're able to make a different choice. A choice for humanity. A choice for life. And so we must know these good people who helped Jews during the Holocaust, and we must learn from them. And in gratitude and hope, we must remember them. So I want to tell you a little story about one such community. Le Chambeau is a small town in south central France. I first learned about it from a video called Weapons of the Spirit. I haven't been there, I tried, but like Auschwitz, it's out in the middle of nowhere. And it was 15, 20 years ago that I tried to get there, and I just couldn't get a hotel reservation nailed down online, and I didn't dare arrive there at night without that. But anyway, that's a long story. By the way, the other story is we flew down to Lourdes instead for our spiritual experience, and we took the pilgrimage, and we sang the Ave Marias and did the whole thing in Lourdes. And that's a different story. But here's the story of Le Chambeau. They were country folk, mostly farmers. They were Huguenots. These were French Protestants of Calvinistic background. In my mind, I think of them as being something like old-timey Presbyterians back in the days when Presbyterians still had fire in the belly, you know. The old-timey ones. Beginning back in 1942, when Jews were running from the Nazis, many of them came through Le Chambeau, probably because it was out in the middle of nowhere, you know. They were trying to get to neutral territory, particularly to Switzerland. And the simple country folks helped them. Now here, this is important. They were led by the minister of their local church. And they asked them two questions. The first one I chose as my title today. Do you think we're brothers or not? And then, do you think it's unjust to turn in the Jews were not. So people at Lechambeau simply folded the Jews into their families, in their community, and they went on. Never admitted they had any Jews. Actually, they never asked people about their background. They said they were just people. That was their evaluation, not a negative judgment. People who had needs, and they, the people of Lechambeau, were there. And it was just the right thing to do. Plain and simple. By the way, one man in the community became an expert forger. He created false documents and even ration stamps for the Jews. By the way, they never admitted they had Jews, but I did read when they talked to one another, sometimes they'd say, well, how many Old Testaments do you have? Never mentioning the word Jew. The Jews had to fit in the community and look like everybody else. And these French folks had school 6 days a week. So they quit having school on Saturday because the Jews would have to violate the Sabbath, or they would have to stand out as being different in behavior from the others. And here's a story that really, really touches my heart. And I wanted to go to Lechambeau, and I just wanted to sit in this little church and feel the energy and meditate on the best of humanity for a while. You know, usually when in a lot of churches, when you get different people there, you want to make sure it's a sermon that really tells them what they need to know. I used to belong to a church, and we want to teach them the truth. And we'd say, well, you know, John knows the truth if he would just do it. And we were the possessors of truth, we believe. The record shows that in Lechambeau, every Sunday, for about 2 years, the minister based his sermon on an Old Testament text to accommodate the Jews. Now, in the road less traveled, G. Scott Peck defined love. And as a marriage and family therapist, I wish people could get this. Defined love as the willingness to extend ourselves for the well-being of another. It's not about finding somebody to love us. It's finding someone to love and someone to be devoted for. The people of Lechambeau did that. They're credited with saving 35,000 lives. And in 1990, the entire town was honored as righteous among the nations. In the garden at Yad Vashem. Now, we live in a diverse world. And by the way, people are far more alike in every way than different. I used to do research, and when we do research, we report differences between groups. The big printout of statistics we get always broke it down, and there were far more similarities in virtually every case than differences, but it was the differences we were looking for. And that tends to be the way we think. But we do live in a diverse world, and Albert Einstein said our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole nature in its beauty. Now, we're New Thought people. I know I'm preaching to the choir because we are the people who get it. But I also think Given the nature of memes and how ideas sneak in our minds and how little things build up, we need to be aware and we need to be wise about what we accept and what we believe. And I can't say what we would do if we were in a situation like the people from Lachambeau, and I'm not sure that maybe we're not. I'm not even sure what I would do, but I would like to think of New Thought people as a little Lachambeau in the world, a place where people who need acceptance and safety can come and be accepted. I've learned a few things from life, and I've learned a few things while I put this material together, and I'd like to share some of them. One is to be helpful. We have to show up. It's a pretty simple concept. As New Thought people, we tend to look at situations and we say, well, all things are in divine right order. Well, folks, look around. In the world, all things are not in divine right order. I'll give you one example. Children in cages at our southern border. No way is that divine right order. I think we only need one example to make the case. All things are in divine right order in divine mind. But we're the expressions of divine mind. We're the face of God on earth. We're the representatives who take the energy and channel it and focus it. And things can be in divine right order when we take divine mind there and apply it to that situation. We also have to be willing to speak up. In all of our lives, we've probably been told we should be nice. I know I was, and my teeth shook up a few times along the way. I tend to, as my mother would say, have a smart mouth. Maybe you've noticed, I don't know. We've also been taught to be neutral, try to see both sides of everything. This is the world led by counselors, And whatever you do, don't take sides. But Elie Wiesel would differ with you. He says, always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. And of course, the implication is that we should be on the right side of history, and we should speak for truth, whichever side it happens to be on. William Faulkner said, never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. And if all people over the world would do this, it would change the earth. And I picked this up from Facebook, the Mystics Sisterhood. I'm not so familiar with that, but it is truth, I'll tell you that. Whenever one person stands up and says, wait a second, what's wrong? This is wrong. It helps other people to do the same. Now, I think Elie Wiesel would tell us that we can't be passive. And I've noticed New Age people like to say, well, I let go and I let God. And I think that's a good idea if we really understand what it means. That doesn't mean I can just bow out of a challenge. That means I need to get around my ego, my human mind, and turn it over to divine mind. But by all means, I stay on the job. So it's our challenge. Now, when I took psychology of the Holocaust as a grad student, the professor, a psychologist, had marvelous knowledge of the history of Holocaust. He had studied it all his life and made some psychological statements about what happened. And he said one of the things that happened to the Jews in the Holocaust is they were just too passive. They overlooked some issues that should have let them know things were really going awry. But they tended to think, well, things will turn out. They even ignored the rumors, and they trusted the government at least not to harm them. And many believed that things were all right, even to the point that some of them were told they were sending trains to take them to a place of safety until things got better. And they took their finest possessions, the few of their finest possessions with them, and got on the trains. When the trains got out of town, they stopped. People robbed them of their best possessions and took them on to Auschwitz. And one of his things was that we need to learn is don't be so passive. And I think we need to become leaders. We're New Thought people. I think we have a calling, and I think we have a lot to offer to the world. And I don't think sometimes we stand up enough to do that. And there are other people that are standing up way too much, probably, to do that. First of all, we need to lead people in terms of the attitudes of our culture, because attitude is everything. And we will manifest our attitudes. And if we're wise enough, we can choose our attitudes. And here's a beautiful quote from Viktor Frankl. And by the way, this came from Auschwitz, where he had decided how he was going to deal with being in Auschwitz. And he decided to turn it over to the universe and not try to micromanage everything. But he also decided that he would live with dignity. They might take everything he had and even his life, but they couldn't take his dignity. And he said everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any set of circumstances and to choose one's own way. We also tend to expect our spiritual leaders to stay out of politics. And I think we need to get over that, because politics is what our life is about. And I hope Cindy's listening, because I think we should empower her to speak to what's going on in the world and speak to what should be. And get over this, stay out of politics business. There are churches out there that are running politics. And we have a voice that should be a part of that. I think we're not nearly expressive enough also in the area of spiritual matters. Now, I understand we're not aggressive in trying to recruit people to be members of our church. And that's fine. Actually, I think it's fine either way. But, and I did come back from when we prosecuted proselyted to the best we really could. But laying that aside, we need to be much more aggressive with the message. How many of you came to New Thought and for the first time you really found God? We need to share that and get it out in the world, whether people come to our church or not. Now I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to leave you with a couple statements, and these are from the Reverend Dr. Barbara Brown Taylor, who's one of the greatest preachers of our times. And we do have people that keep up with that, by the way, and there's always a handful of them that all the preachers study. Everything they say, how they do it, they're the standards for the profession, and she's at the top. These are the kind of people who do lectureships at Harvard and Yale and Oxford and Cambridge and all of those kinds of places. She said, beware of those who claim to know the will of God and are prepared to use force if necessary to make others conform. and they're all over the place. And it's happening. She said, beware of those who can't tell God's will from their own. And they're all over the place. And fire me if you want to, or cut my salary. But I have to say this. Beware of those who think they hate the same people God hates. I'm tired of the religion of hate, and I'm ready to speak up against it. And I think we should. There is no hate in God. And that's the stuff that the Holocaust is made of. If you think God hates the Jews, then you can kill them. Okay? And by the way, the Crusades, so we should be talking about the Crusades too. Well, we live in a diverse world, a world with great needs, a world of great wonders and beauty, and opportunity as well. But I think we need to be vigilant, and we need to look for divine guidance and use wisdom in what we listen to and what we believe and what we do. And I think it's imperative that we learn to live with all our brothers and sisters in the world, and to do so in peace. So we have to ask, are they my brothers and sisters or not? Whoever it is. And now let's end with the affirmation for the day, please. All God's people are my people, and I honor the image of God in all of them. I will support all that is good and right in the world, and I'll be an instrument of divine mind to heal all that's not right with the world. And so it is. And I thank you. God bless you.